Asmat Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Paramagurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Sarvagurubhyo Namaha. So I offer my respects unto all my teachers. Today we're continuing on with our discussion of Yatindramata Dipika by Srinivasa. And we've done 8 chapters. So we're up to the 9th chapter. The 9th chapter is about Ishvara, or God, meaning Sriman Narayana. And we're going to have a look at that. We have one other chapter after that. So maybe in this session, we'll be able to complete the whole book. Let's have a look at the 9th chapter. So the chapters are called avatars. There are 10 of them. So this is the 9th avatar, Ishvara. Now Ishvara is explained. The characteristics of Ishvara is that he is the controller of all. So the very first thing he says is he's the controller of all, the principle of all, that person that's worshipped in every religious act, the bestower of all fruits, the sustainer of all, the cause of all effects, and has everything except himself and his consciousness as his body. That's an interesting statement. Ishvara becomes the material cause of the universe by virtue of his nature as qualified by sentient and non-sentient in their subtle state. Okay, he's the material cause. When we talk about causes of the universe, we give the example usually of a potter, a person who takes clay and turns it into a pot. So there are some philosophies in India where they believe that there are two causes basically in Indian philosophy. The first cause is called the Upadan Karana, and the other one is called the Nimitta Karana. So Karana means cause. So there is the efficient and the material cause. Some philosophies believe that God is the efficient cause. That is, that he is the one who shapes the universe. He creates the universe. Like a potter creates a pot. But the example of the potter creates a pot out of clay. The clay is not the potter. The potter is not the clay. The potter simply fashions the clay or makes the clay into the pot. So the potter in this example is an efficient cause. So they say God is an efficient cause of the universe. But here, what Srinivasa is saying is God, Ishvara or God or Sriman Narayana is also the material cause. The material cause means in our potter and pot, it would mean that the potter is also the clay. So the thing which is being created out of the creator. He is the material out of which, when we say he's the material cause, it means he is the material out of which the universe is formed, out of which the living beings come, out of which everything comes. So, although there are some philosophies that believe that God is either the material cause or the efficient cause, but not both, in Sri Vaishnavism, we accept that God is both the material and the efficient cause. So he's both the Upadan and the Nimitta Karana. Okay, so that's what he's saying here. Ishvara is the material cause. He becomes the efficient cause by virtue of his nature as qualified by his will, right? When we talk about God's will, we talk about what's called Satya Sankalpa, his true will. He has his will when he wills something, it occurs, right? So there's never his will or his idea for something to happen is never thwarted. Like we have desires in this material world and we desire to do something, but sometimes we can't do that thing. Whereas the will of God is always fulfilled. So that's why it's called Satya Sankalpa. Sankalpa would be a vow or a determination in a ritual. So if we have a vow or a determination to do something, that's fine. But the Sankalpa sometimes, or the will or the vow or the determination to do something is thwarted. It can't be done. That thing we want to do cannot be done for many reasons, right? But God's will is always done, right? Even the Christians say, thy will be done, right? Thy will be done. Always, God's will is always done, right? So therefore, he is the efficient cause by nature as qualified by his divine will or his Satya Sankalpa, which is always done. And also the cooperant cause by virtue of his nature as immanent in time. So because of also his nature of being all pervasive, he also pervades time, and time itself is a factor in action. If we look at the Bhagavad Gita, there are five factors in action. Only one of them is a living being. God is there, time is there, right? So there are other factors in action, right? So because God is pervading actually all of these five, right? He is the primal cause of action. So he is the primal efficient cause. I think that's very clear. Material cause, and this also comes back to the point that Vaishnavas, we think in a way, the way that we think is Sattvika Tyaga. Sattvika Tyaga means we give up the fruits of our actions because our actions are really not our actions. All actions are performed by God, right? Because he's pervading us also. So if we do something, it's like God doing something. It's not that that shouldn't be confused into thinking that if we do something which is wrong or sinful, that God is doing that wrong or sinful thing. We can't blame him for our wrong actions or our sinful actions. However, the essence or the essence of all action is coming from him. Material cause is that object which is competent to undergo modification in the form of effect. So there's cause and there's effect. Wherever there's an effect, we look for a cause. God is the ultimate cause of all effects, right? We hear this quotation sometimes. People say the cause of all causes, right? Easier to understand. He's the cause of all effects. The efficient cause is that which brings about the modification in the form of the effect. I think that's pretty clear. The cooperant cause is the object which is helpful to produce in the production of the effect, okay? So that will be like a catalyst. Sometimes there's a reaction between two things, and there's something which helps that reaction occur. So in this case, he's talking about time being also a catalyst to aid in action, especially in this material world. So, or with reference to the essential form of a substance qualified by a subsequent state, the material cause is that same substance qualified by an appetent constant antecedent state. Okay, exactly what that means, I'm not quite sure. I'm going to pause here for a second. So another understanding here is that the cooperant cause is not only considered to be like a catalyst, but it's also what he calls here an appetent constant, and something. Material cause is that same substance qualified by an appetent constant antecedent state. For instance, okay, so let's get the example here. The earth substance qualified by the state of a clod. So earth is the element. A clod is a piece of earth, right? Is the material cause with reference to the same substance qualified by the consequent state of a pot. Now here we're talking about clay in the pot, right? Okay, so this is the typical example, clay in the pot. So the prior state, okay, so what we have to understand is this, because of time, we see creation of a pot goes through different stages, and the first stage is the stage of it just being clay, or what he says here is a clod of earth. So clay. So there's some clay, and that's the prior state of the pot, and the potter then makes the pot into the clay into the pot. The efficient cause is that which is required to form the pot, required by a form, that is the pot, different from the substance, which is on the point of modification. In this case, the cooperative cause is brought under the efficient cause. So in the case of this example, the cooperative cause, the only efficient cause is the potter himself who makes the pot. Thus, in the case of the threefold cause as well as the twofold cause, right? So we can say there's threefold cause or there's a twofold cause. The twofold cause is very simple. It's the nimitta karana, the upadan karana, and the nimitta karana. So it's the material cause and the efficient cause. In the case of understanding this as a threefold cause, there's also this other cooperative cause or catalyst involved. Since the definition of causality is applicable to Bhagawan Sriman Narayana alone, he becomes the cause of the entire universe. Okay, so whether we think of it as two causes or three causes, basically nothing happens without God, and nothing is created without God, without his divine will. Now, how can causality rest finally in Narayana? If this be asked, it will be said in reply that Narayana is determined by the examination of Vedanta texts along with reason. Okay, so how is it that people ask, how is it that we understand, how do we understand that Lord Narayana is the cause of everything? He's the cause of all effects. We understand this because it's stated in the Vedanta, right? Otherwise, there's no way that we can understand what is beyond material nature, what is transcendental to material nature. We can understand material nature, we can understand this world empirically, and we've understood that there are different ways, pratyaksha, in the first chapter and the second chapter, pratyaksha and anumana, through sense perception and inference, or logical understanding, we can understand things in this material world, we can measure and we can understand those things. But things that are beyond this material world, things which are totally transcendental, like the cause of the universe, right, can only be understood through the Vedanta. So we can understand the cause of the universe through the Vedanta, right, as being Sriman Narayana. But the examination of Vedanta texts along with reason. It's not that we should examine the Vedantic texts and not apply anumana, not apply logical inference to them also. We have to apply logic to them also. We have to understand them logically. Some people read Vedanta and they misunderstand it, and they don't understand Sriman Narayana to be the original cause. That's because they're not understanding it correctly. So we have to study Vedanta, and we have to study it with logic and reason. It is as follows. In the first place, Prakriti, material nature, cannot become the cause of the universe because of the non-existence of thinking, etc. Right? So Prakriti, there are some schools of Indian thought that say that material nature, that matter itself, is the cause of the universe. Or some form of matter, either in a conglomerate state which is not broken down into different elements. We discussed the different elements according to the Sankhya theory. There are 24 elements, starting with earth, water, fire, air, ether. Then the different working senses, knowledge acquiring senses, different things. So these are all considered to be elements of Prakriti, elements of material nature, but they themselves are not conscious. They are not sentient. As we know from the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna in the 7th chapter talks about these things. And then he says in the next verse after that, he says, above these, aparayamitastvanyam prakritim vidime param, right? Above these things, above Prakriti, is Jiva Bhuta Mahabaho. There are sentients called Jivas or Atmans, Jivatmans. So it's very clear from the scripture that there's a difference between sentient and non-sentient. Here, the point being expressed is that those philosophies that believe that the creation of the universe has come about from insentient matter, it's not possible because there is a non-existence in matter of thinking. There's no sentience, right? This matter is not conscious, and therefore it can't will itself to create the universe in all its diversity. That's the point. There has to be some creation is a conscious act, is the point being made here. In the Chandogya, indeed, the Chandogya Upanishad, which is one of the principal Upanishads, indeed, that which is expressed by terms of Sat, eternality, Akasha, which means ether or sky, Prana, which means air, life air or the air, right? Like that, is perceived to be the cause of the universe. Okay, so here in the Chandogya, it says that. It says Sat, Akash. It uses these terms. But the thing is that these terms in the Upanishad, we have to understand logically, do not mean simply, space or air or something like that. What they actually refer to, Brahman, they actually refer to the great spirit. In other words, Sriman Narayana, embodied by Sriman Narayana. These are just simply different names in the Veda, which ultimately mean Sriman Narayana. So in the Vajrasanayaka means the Shukla Yajurveda. That which is expressed by the term Brahman is seen to be the cause. Okay, so he's quoting all these different, after saying that we can understand the cause of the universe by the Vedanta, he's now quoting some sections of the Vedanta and what it says. And he's explaining that if you read the Chandogya or you read the Shukla Yajurveda, the Vajrasanaya Savita, right, that you may find these different terms like Sat, Akash, Prana, Brahman. There are these different terms. All these terms actually mean Sriman Narayana, right? And that can be understood by logical understanding of the Vedanta texts. In accordance with the canon, that all the branches of the Veda can convey the same doctrine, right? So, okay, so there's an idea amongst Vedantins that all the Upanishads and the Samhitas and all the different parts of the Vedas say one thing and one thing only. They have a common thread or a common basis in them, right? The passages which indicate the cause must be explained as pointing out one object only, right? So in other words, some people might look at the Vedas and they might say, oh, here Agni is said to be the cause. Here Vayu is said to be the cause. Here Prana is said to be the cause. Here Akash is said to be the cause. Here it's Brahman, whatever Brahman is, right, is said to be the cause. Okay, so a foolish person thinks, right, that, oh, these are all different ideas and these are not in some way unified. However, Vedavyasa, or Badarayana, wrote the Vedanta Sutras to explain, to show that all the parts of the Vedanta, all the parts of the Vedas actually have one meaning, right? Have a single meaning, which is common, and they don't have this multi-branched meaning, that they don't have all these different speculations that different things were the cause of the universe. Right. So in accordance with the canon, that all the branches of the Veda convey the same doctrine. So this is the first thing. When we're understanding Vedanta, we shouldn't think that one part of Vedanta means one thing, another part means another thing, and they're in conflict. The passages which, through logic, we have to reconcile these things. If we think that they're in opposition to each other, because they come from the same body of literature. Excuse me. The passages which indicate the cause must be explained as pointing out one object only. There is only one cause. There cannot be two or many ultimate causes of the universe. that doesn't make logical sense. And therefore, if Vedanta appears to say that, we have to reject that, and we have to see that Vedanta tells us, as logic also dictates to us, that there is only one ultimate cause of the universe and everything that we see. Similarly, it must be said that the terms such as Sat, which means eternality, etc., which denote generality, must terminate in the particular category, Brahman, right, the Supreme Spirit, right, after the analogy of Chagapasu. Chagapasu means is an analogy about a sacrificial animal. Okay, we won't go into that, but it's there in the footnote. There's some discussion about that. Anyway, it's an analogy. Okay, so in the aforesaid manner, that which is denoted by the term Brahman, right? The great, Brahman means the great, the greatest, ends in that which is denoted by the term Atman, right? So the term Atman, sometimes we hear the term Atman and we don't know what it means, because the Atma can mean mind, body. It can also mean the soul, right? It can also mean God, Atman, right? We generally we're going to say either Jivatman or Paramatman to distinguish between the individual sentient being and the supreme sentient being, Sriman Narayana, who is the cause of all causes, the cause of the universe, the cause of all effects. So, but sometimes in the Upanishads, it is just the word Atman is just used. So we don't know whether it means Jivatman or Paramatman. We don't also know. Sometimes it means the body. Sometimes it means something else. So we have to understand in context exactly what the term Atman means in spoken of in the Taittiriya. In the Taittiriya Upanishad, in the Krishna Yajurveda, Taittiriya Upanishad is part of the Taittiriya Aranyaka, which is part of the Krishna Yajurveda. That we have this term Atman. We have it in throughout the Upanishads. Now, what is it that which is denoted by the term Atman? So this is a question, right? If this question is asked, the following doubts may arise. Is that Indra, celebrated in the Vedas, or equally famous Agni, or Surya, well known as the object of meditation, or Soma, right, the god of the moon, right, spoken of as the cause, or Kubera, said to be the bestower of any desired fruit, or Yama, or Varuna. But these deities cannot become the cause of the universe, since Scripture declares them to be subject to karma, possessing limited sovereignty, and liable to destruction. So they have these three things. They can have karma. They are possessed of limited power, limited rulership, right? Sovereignty, and they are liable to destruction. But in the Svetashvatara, it appears that Shiva seems to be the cause of the universe. So these are all doubts that come up. Why, if you say Sriman Narayana is the cause of all effects, then why in the Svetashvatara Upanishad does it seem to say that Shiva is the cause of the universe? Likewise, in the Atharvana Shaka, right? The Atharvana Shaka, there's some part of the Vedas called the Atharvana Shaka, right? That which is denoted by the term Shambhu, right? Which is another name for Shiva. Of course, all these names, anybody who knows Vishnu Sahasranam will know that all these names that we've just discussed here, Indra, Agni, Surya, Soma, Kubera, Yama, Varuna, are also mentioned as names of Vishnu. They're all also in this Vishnu Sahasranama, right? For those persons who know Vishnu Sahasranama, right? So the ultimate original name is for Sriman Narayana, right? All these names. In other words, Sriman Narayana is known as Sarvanam, that all names indicate him. All names actually indicate him. All words and names indicate him primarily. But secondarily, when people use these terms, they normally mean they're normally talking about different devatas, about different demigods or higher living beings, right? So again, there's some confusion because in this Atharvana Shaka, the term Shambhu seems to be the object of meditation and the cause of reality of this universe. So similarly, in the Atharvashiras, which there are a couple of different Atharvashira Upanishads. One of them is the Narayana Atharvashira Upanishad. There's another one, I'm not sure exactly whether it comes in one of the 108, but there's a Ganesha Atharvashira Upanishad. But anyhow, I'm not sure exactly which Atharvashiras they're talking about here, but probably it means it normally means the Narayana Atharvashira Upanishad. That which is denoted by the term Rudra is said to be the self of all, capital S self, meaning God. Okay, so that's also there. So he's putting up all these points here, that there are all these different names in the Vedas. We're confused about what they mean. In the Taittiriya, Hiranyagarbha is known to be the cause of the universe. Even here, because of the canon of interpretation known as the Samanya Vishesha is a particular term for how to interpret the Vedanta. It is but proper that all the general terms, such as Shiva, Shambhu, Rudra, etc., should terminate in the particularity denoted by the term Hiranyagarbha. Right? So there's this idea that the Hiranyagarbha is a catch phrase for all these other terms like Shiva, Shambhu, Rudra, etc. Philologically, if we go into the meaning of the terms, right? The term Shiva expresses auspiciousness, and this is what it means primarily in the 1,000 Names of Vishnu. When we say Shiva, right, we mean auspicious. Just recently, we presented what's called the Rudradhyaya, which is a section of the Taittiriya Krishna Yajurveda Samhita, which names many, many different names of the Lord, of Sriman Narayana, but people take them to be names of the Devata Shiva. Right? Some people take them to be names of the Devata Shiva. So philologically, the term Shiva expresses auspiciousness, as illustrated in the following passages. So he's giving some passages here to prove that. May good befall all the worlds. May the work be good. May you have a good journey, etc. These are quotations that if seen in full will show us that the term Shiva means auspiciousness. Likewise, the term Rudra expresses Agni. So Rudra can also express Agni. In a general manner, in this manner, general terms such as Maheshwara means what? Maha Ishvara. It means the great Lord, right? The great Lord. So there are many great lords, but the greatest of all great lords is Sriman Narayana. So Shambhu, etc., terminate in particular term Chaturmukha. Chaturmukha is a term which denotes Brahma in this universe with 4 heads, right? Chaturmukha Brahma. So, owing to the denotative power of component parts of those words. So what we have to do is, if we look at these words and we break them up and we understand the meanings of the parts like that, they become descriptive words, and they're not. So in English we would say there are proper nouns, right? If a proper noun is somebody's name, and then there are general nouns, and these are general nouns which describe particular things. Some people take them as the proper name of the Devata Shiva or Agni or Vayu, but in fact, when used in the Veda, they are actually descriptions of Sriman Narayana. Why should not the terms such as Shiva, etc., which denote the cause, refer to Rudra by the primary force of the word? Right? There's a doubt. Such doubt need not arise, since according to scripture, Rudra had his origin from Chaturmukha and is not free from sin. Right? So don't be confused when you read the Upanishads or you read in the Vedas that Rudra, or Shiva or Rudra is the cause. Right? It doesn't mean the Devata Shiva, because it's very clear, if by reading scripture, that Rudra or Shiva the Devata, was a mental son of Chaturmukha Brahma. That Brahma created Shiva as his son. Hence, causality cannot belong to Rudra. Therefore, the terms such as Shiva, etc., terminate in Chaturmukha, who is expressed in such terms as Hiranyagarbha, Prajapati, Swayambhu. These are all. Prajapati means the great father, the progenitor, right? Hiranyagarbha. Hiranya means golden. Garbha means like an egg or womb. The Swayambhu. Swayambhu means self-born, right? Aja means self-born. So these are all terms which are descriptive. In this manner, since Narayana is declared in Mahapanishad, Narayana Upanishad, Subala Upanishad, Maitrayani Upanishad, Purusha Suktam, right? Narayana Anuvakam, Antaryami Brahmana, etc. And he quotes all these different places where Sriman Narayana is clearly told to be the cause, right? To be the supreme cause, the entity whom all terms denote, the entity, again, Sriman Narayana is the entity whom all terms denote, ultimately. All descriptive, these descriptive terms denote actually Sriman Narayana, the bestower of liberation, and the constitutor of the world as his body. It is but fit that terms such as Swayambhu, Hiranyagarbha, Prajapati should refer to Narayana. Thus, Narayana alone is the cause of the entire universe, the noble object of all meditations. Okay, so he's taken us logically through this. And he said that there are these, he's given some terms. And he said these terms all taken together mean Rudra. And these terms, then if we take these terms, including Rudra, other terms, and put them together, these all mean Chaturmukha. And if we take Chaturmukha and all these other terms, right, we put those, look at those, what they mean, they actually mean Hiranyagarbha. And if we take Hiranyagarbha, Prajapati, Swayambhu, and these other terms and look at them, if we look at Mahapanishad, Narayana Upanishad, Subala Upanishad, Maitrayani Upanishad, Purusha Sukta, Narayana Anuvaka, which is the next part of Purusha Suktam, and the Antaryami Brahmana, which is a part of the Vedas, right? If we look at all those places, we'll see that all those terms are inclusive of Sriman Narayana. Sriman Narayana is understood by those terms as well. So thus Narayana alone is the cause of the entire universe and knowable object of all meditations. Okay, so he's just said, what he's done is, first of all, he made an assertion that Narayana is known by the Vedanta. He's understood by the scriptures, right? He said that he's explained how God causes the universe, right? He is the efficient and the material cause, and he's also the catalyst, right? So he explained these three types of causes. In the world, we see things are created by these different causes, right? So, and he gives the example of the pot and the clay. So he explains about material, things are caused out of, and the efficient person who molds the material, and also the fact that there might be some sort of catalyst in the form of time, which is also pervaded by Sriman Narayana. So we either think of Sriman Narayana as being the two causes of the universe, the efficient and the material cause, or the three causes, the efficient, the material cause, and the catalyst as well. Then, so he's first of all defined the cause. Then he said, how do we know? How do we know who that person is? Who is that who is all these causes, right? We know that only by the Vedanta, because that's a transcendental thing. It's beyond the material world. It's beyond material nature to understand this. So we understand it from the scripture, right? Because we already discussed how to understand in the first three chapters. We understood the epistemological approach of the three Vaishnavas, which is the theory of knowledge, of right knowledge, and that is based on proofs. And the proofs are three: pratyaksha, sense perception; anumana, logical inference; and shabda, or authoritative statement. The highest authoritative statements come in the Vedas. Therefore, what the Vedas say is true, but we have to understand what the Vedas say by logic. So he has now explained by logic that Agni, Indra, Vayu, Kubera, all these different names do not mean the demigods or the devatas when they are mentioned in the Vedas as being the cause, when Shiva or Rudra or Chaturmukha Brahma or Hiranyagarbha or Prajapati or Swayambhu, whenever those names are used in the Vedas to mean the creator, what they mean in the Vedas is they mean a description. They're descriptive, as in the word Shiva meaning auspicious. They're descriptive, and that all these names can be found also in Vishnu Sahasranama. So we understand from Vishnu Sahasranama, from different other scriptures, that these names ultimately mean, and from the scriptures that we mentioned before, like Purusha Suktam and the different, a lot of the different Upanishads, not just one Upanishad here and there, but the majority of the Upanishads, if we read them, we understand that Sriman Narayana is the cause of all causes, and he's ultimately the supreme person and the cause of the universe. Okay, so now, does not Antaraditya Vidya refer to Rudra? Okay, so this is another part of the Upanishads. To go more deeply into this, we have to study the source of this particular Upanishadic section. Such doubt need not be entertained, for it is established by valid means. What does it mean, valid means? When he says valid means, it means valid proofs of Pratyaksha, Anumana, and Shabda, sense perception, inference, and authoritative statement, right? It is established by valid means that it refers only to Vishnu. And in that Vidya, in that Upanishadic section, the term Bhargas is declared to be terminating in a S or S Sakara. Bharga. I'm not exactly sure what that means. We have to look that up. It obviously Bharga with a Bhargaha or Bhargas means effulgence, but why it's explained here as ending with an S, terminating in an S, I'm not sure. Maybe if we looked at the let's just do one thing and let's just pause. So continuing on, but then since it is explained that Rudra constitutes the indwelling self of Sriman Narayana, who's denoted by the term of Akasha in the Dahara Vidya. Dahara Vidya refers to Rudra. This doubt need not arise, for saying that Rudra constitutes the indwelling self of Narayana. Okay, so in the Dahara Vidya, it's described about Rudra, but the Rudra means something different in that case. It means the indwelling self, Sriman Narayana. This doubt need not arise, for what is mentioned there is a host of perfect attributes immanent in Sriman Narayana as objects of meditation. Likewise, all the meditations have to be construed. Okay, so there are 32 or 33 Upanishadic Vidyas. In the Upanishads, there are these different sections, and they describe different forms of meditation on Brahman, on the Supreme. And ultimately, that means meditation upon Sriman Narayana. So all these different aspects are understood to be meditations on Sriman Narayana. Therefore, Narayana, the Supreme Brahman, who is the embodiment of all auspicious qualities, who is different from the Prakriti, in a sense, right? Although it's his body, right? And the individual selves, they're considered his body, but who is different from them, right? And who is qualified by them, right? In the term Vishishta Dvaita, it means Vishishta means qualified, right? It's qualified by them, is alone the cause of the universe. Now, an account of non-dualistic Shruti texts, Brahman alone is real and is devoid of attributes. Okay, so he's talking here about the Advaita schools. There are different schools of Vedanta which believe in non-dualism. Non-dualism means oneism, monism. right? That there's only one thing. And they say that this one thing is called Brahman, the great, right? The greatest, right? And that thing is said to be devoid of attributes, right? So, but right here above, he's described Srimanarayana, the Supreme Brahman, who is in the embodiment of all auspicious qualities. We say Ananta Kalyana Gunas. He's the embodiment of all auspicious qualities. So then down here, we look that there are different statements in the Vedas, and some statements describe God as being dual or different from the universe, right? And some and the souls, and some describe God as being the same or exactly the same as everything, as the souls in the universe. So these are called, there are non-dualistic and dualistic Shruti statements in the Vedas which are non-dualistic and some that are dualistic. These are called Abheda, the non-dualistic ones, and Beda. Beda means difference. So in Sanskrit, Veda Shrutis are those Shrutis, those sections of the Vedas which describe difference in this world. And there are Advaita Shrutis, which deal with oneness. So here he's talking about the non-dualistic, or the ones that deal with oneness, the Advaita Shrutis. And those Advaita Shrutis not only say that everything is one thing, which is the Brahman, the supreme, but that Brahman is the only real thing. Everything is an illusion. All difference is an illusion, and is devoid of attributes. Whereas we just saw that Sriman Narayana is full of all auspicious attributes. So then here it's saying that in the Veda sometimes it talks about Brahman as having no attributes. The word nirguna is given. The word attribute is guna, right? So guna means the qualities, with no qualities, right? Nirguna means without qualities, right? But in Sri Vaishnavism, in the philosophy of Ramanuja, the term nirguna doesn't mean that there are no qualities in a thing. It doesn't mean without all qualities. What it actually means, the word nirguna, it means without bad qualities, without inauspicious qualities. When we say Sriman Narayana is full of all auspicious qualities, it means he has all of his qualities are auspicious. He has not got inauspicious qualities. Okay, so now on account of non-dualistic Shruti text, Brahman alone is real and is devoid of attributes. That's what it said. Everything else, namely the knowing subjects, objects of knowledge, etc., that are different from that, meaning Brahman, is imagined in that is Brahman itself and is unreal. Okay, so this is Adi Shankaracharya has proposed this understanding of Vedanta. This is how different people have misunderstood Vedanta. When they look in the Vedas and the Vedanta, they see all these different names of devatas. So the first thing that he explains is, right, we do have to look to the Vedic texts. We do have to look into the Upanishads and the Vedanta. But when we look, we should not misunderstand these terms to mean these different devatas, but we should understand them to be descriptive terms of Sriman Narayana only. Secondly, he says, right, that when we look in the Vedas, we not only see all these different terms that we think are for devatas, but we're actually describing Sriman Narayana. But secondly, we see that there are some passages which try to tell us that there is only one spiritual thing called Brahman, which has no qualities, and everything else is unreal. Everything else is an illusion. This is the philosophy of Adi Shankaracharya. He says, his motto is Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya, that Brahma or Brahman, or the Supreme Spirit, is the reality. That is the reality. But it is nirguna, it has no qualities, and everything else is false. Jagat, this world of living beings and material nature, is false, is an illusion. It is an illusion. He tries in many ways, Shankaracharya, to explain how this world is an illusion, how an illusion can come if there is this pure spiritual entity without any qualities called Brahman, how it can manifest into all these shapes and forms and material nature and everything like that. Even in an illusion, how can that come about? right? That is the sum and substance of Adi Shankara's philosophy, and he tries to do that. There are several ways that he does it. He says he says that it is a superimposition of Maya or illusion on Brahman that creates this material world, the appearance of this material world, and the separate living beings. But the problem with every instance when Shankara tries to explain this is that there's a fallacy there's a problem with his explanation. For instance, the problem with saying that Maya is a superimposition on Brahman is that we've said that there's only one thing, Brahman, and therefore how can we say that there's a separate thing, Maya, which affects Brahman? We can't. There is no Maya. There cannot be Maya in his system, but yet he posits this idea that there is illusion, and illusion is a separate thing from Brahman and affects Brahman. So right there and then, his philosophy fails. So anyway, he's talking about this misunderstanding that some people, they look in the Vedas and they see impersonalism there. They see the idea of Brahman without any qualities whatsoever there, but they're wrong. Brahman there, it's not logical. This is why he said in the beginning we have to look at the Vedas and Vedanta with reason, with logic, with Anumana. Brahman itself, owing to nescience, is involved in empirical existence, right? So this is the theory of the Mayavadis, that somehow Brahman, the completely pure and spiritual substance, which is non-dual, like that, somehow gets involved in ignorance, in nescience. How does that happen? That can never be explained by these other philosophies. Right, the non-dual knowledge, right, derived from the passages like that thou art, Chandogya Upanishad 6:7, right, that thou art, right, Tattvam Asi is the Sanskrit, right. In the Vedanta, according to Shankara, there are certain passages which are more important than other passages. This is one of the basic fallacies of the other schools, is that we have Shankaracharya and then we have Madhvacharya, the three main flavors of Vedanta, the three main understandings of the Vedanta come from Shankaracharya, Madhvacharya, and Ramanujacharya. So Shankaracharya, what he says is he looks at the Veda and he sees all these sections in the Veda which talk about unity, which talk about monism, which talk about oneness of Brahman, that everything is one. Madhva, on the other hand, those are called the Abheda Shrutis. And Madhva, on the other hand, looks at the Vedas and he looks through them and he sees all these different, he sees also statements which talk about difference, about distinction, about that reality is not one, but it is multiple, it's many. So he sees the Veda Shrutis, the sections of the Vedas which talk about difference. Right. So both Madhva and Shankara, they make the mistake of saying that these ones that I see, which talk about oneness, these ones that I see that talk about difference, are the most important parts of the Vedas. Whereas what Ramanuja says is he says the whole Vedas are important. Everything in the Vedas is important, not just the things, the passages which talk of oneness, not just the passages which talk of difference. But the whole Vedas. In the Bhagavad Gita, for instance, Krishna says, by all the Vedas I'm to be known. Krishna doesn't say, by only the Abheda Shrutis I'm to be known. By only the Veda Shrutis I'm to be known. Right? So there's also another set of instructions in the Vedas, another set of statements in the Vedas, which Ramanuja talks about. So there's the Veda Shrutis, the ones that talk of difference, the ones that talk of oneness, the Abheda Shrutis. And there's another form which is called the Ghatika Shrutis. So Ghatika Shrutis is what Ramanuja says. There's a section there. There are sections which they seem to talk about oneness, but they also seem to talk about difference. The same statement can be interpreted in different ways or can be understood in those two different ways to mean oneness and difference. So there's that third part. And Ramanuja doesn't put his emphasis only on that part. He puts his emphasis on the whole thing. So Shankara, there are certain Abheda Shrutis which talk about oneness, and one a very famous one. He takes out a few of those very. He says that there are some which are much more important than others. So he says Tattvamasi Aham Brahmasmi. There are certain things which he calls Mahavakyas, or great statements in the Vedas. Not that all the Vedas are great, just all the Vedas are great, he says, but there are some parts which are greater than others, and he has this idea that this Tattvamasi, and there are certain statements which are great, which are he calls them Mahavakyas, or great statements. Right? We don't agree with that. We say all the Vedas are great. And anyway, this passage from Chandogya, Tattvamasi, that thou art, is taken to mean that you are equal to God, or that the individual is equal to the Supreme, like that, non-different. Right. However, it can be discussed in a different way. So this word tattvam means tat means that meaning the Supreme Brahman, right? Thou meaning the individual soul. Asi means is. So we are that. We are that, or I am that, right? Is the meditation by the people who are what we call Mayavadis or Advaitins or non-dualists, right? Monists who only believe in the one, impersonal Brahman spirit. So, but there's another way to interpret that Sanskrit, and that is if we say that tattvam is a compound, we can say it is a genitive compound. It means tasya tvam, which means of him. So instead of saying I am him, it can also mean I am of him. I am a servant of him. I belong to him, right? So that is the interpretation of different Vaishnavacharyas like Madhvacharya and Ramanujacharya. So this Tattvamasi is misunderstood by a lot of people. So he's just mentioning it here. He's mentioning the misunderstanding. So the non-dual knowledge derived from passages like Tattvamasi removes nescience. That's what the Advaitins say. That when you meditate upon that you are non-different from God, that will remove the ignorance which is causing you to think that you are different from God. Right? Therefore, when adherents of other schools like Advaita, right, non-dualism, right, maintain that the import of the Vedanta passages is undifferentiated pure consciousness, how can Narayana be the import of such texts, and how can the description that he is the mind of all auspicious qualities be maintained? Okay, so this is another doubt. Normally in the system of philosophy, there is this system of syllogism where a certain statement is made, and a doubt about the meaning of that statement is presented, which is called the Purva Paksha, the first discussion, right? The first query, and then the Purva Paksha, that query is answered by an answer which is called the Siddhanta. So we have Purva Paksha and Siddhanta. We have the question, and now we're going to get the answer. So that is the question that is being posed here by Srinivas, the author. If this be asked, it is said in reply, Narayana is proved to be the cause of the universe from the scriptural texts which treat of causality. So if we look in the Vedanta, if we look in those texts, we see that Lord Narayana is said to be the cause of all causes, the cause of all effects of this universe. From these scriptural texts, the apparent contradiction between the dualist and non-dualist texts is harmonized by means of the mediating texts. So because Ramanuja says, because we have these Gatika Shrutis, we have these passages in the Vedas that harmonize oneness and difference, because we can see that, and because also we logically know that the Veda has one meaning. The Veda has one meaning, it doesn't have three meanings. There's not three Vedas. There's not three different ideas being presented in the Vedas or Vedanta. It's not that there's a monistic Veda, there's a dualistic Veda, and then there's some sort of in between Veda. No, it's all one literature with one meaning. And therefore, what we have to understand is if we want to reconcile oneness with difference, we have to look at the passages which do that themselves, and then we have to understand those other passages in terms of how we reconcile that there is oneness and difference in the Supreme. So Narayana is proved to be the cause of the universe from the scriptural texts which deal with causality. The apparent contradiction between the dualistic and non-dualistic texts is harmonized by means of the mediating scriptures. Since the subject matter is different, the scriptural texts which define Brahman as devoid of attributes deny only Brahman the evil qualities. This is what I said, that when we say the word nirguna, meaning no qualities, it doesn't actually mean no qualities. What it actually has to mean, it must mean this. It must mean no evil qualities, no inauspicious qualities. Right? That Brahman, the Supreme Lord, Sriman Narayana, has no inauspicious qualities. Since it is not proved that the knowing subjects, objects of knowledge, are imagined by means of nescience, right? So he's now talking about the idea that everything is created by ignorance. Somehow ignorance has produced this effect of the world and the souls from the one Brahman, the one spirit. The effects produced from Brahman are real. I'll say that again. The effects produced from Brahman are real. What does that mean? It means this universe of souls and matter is real. So there are two ideas here. Previously, I said that Shankaracharya's philosophy can be boiled down into a nutshell called Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. Brahma Satyam means that Brahman only is true. And Jagat Mithya, Mithya means illusion, right? Or false, right? This world is false. This world meaning the material nature of the universe and the living beings also, the individual souls, they are false. That is false, right? So that's his philosophy here, and that is called Vaivartavad. Vaivartavad in Sanskrit. Vada means a type of philosophy, right? The word vadati means to speak. So when a philosopher is speaking, he's speaking of Vad. He's speaking his philosophy. So Vaivarta means the philosophy of how ignorance somehow turns Brahman into all these illusions that we see of the universe and the souls. On the other hand, the Vaishnava philosophers, and also some other philosophers in other religions too, believe in what is called Parinamabad. Parinamabad is the philosophy by which Brahman has a real transformation, not an illusory transformation, but a real transformation into the souls in the world. He creates the souls in the world, and the souls in the world are therefore real. There is reality. And it's amazing that there are even some people that I've spoken to who appear to be Vaishnavas. Technically, they belong to some Vaishnava Sampradaya or some Vaishnava group. And yet, when you get down to the nitty-gritty point on this, they do not believe. They think that this material world is an illusion. They think that they're dreaming. They're somewhere else, and they're dreaming, and this is a big dream. But this is not an illusion. This is reality. There is a reality here, right? It is not a permanent thing. It is always changing, right? The soul is permanent. The material nature changes. The material elements, they go through different transformations. They're never completely destroyed, but they go through different transformations. So sometimes when we see things go through transformations, we say that thing is not real, right? In the sense that it's not eternal. It's not eternally in that same form. The example we gave before was the pot. The pot was originally clay. After time, it becomes a pot. After a lot more time, it becomes broken back down into clay, right? When you get a piece of clay, you make it into a pot. After some time, the cause of the pot is the is the clay. Later on, the pot is broken or it disintegrates into dust again, or it becomes potsherds. It becomes broken pieces of pot. The cause of the dust, the cause of the potsherds, the shards, the cause of the end result is also, after some time, right, is also caused from the pot and from the clay. So it's all the same material, it's just in different forms. Starts off as a lump of clay, then becomes a pot, then becomes broken pieces or dust, right? These is the same thing. So this material nature is also, it's the same, it keeps going like this, but it transforms. So when somebody says the pot is not real because now it's dust, right? It is still dust, so it is still real in a sense. So when we say a material thing is not real, we're trying to say that it is temporarily in this form, right? But even science has these second law of thermodynamics, which says that matter and energy, matter cannot be created or destroyed, but matter can interchangeably become energy, energy to become matter. So it's never fully lost. It's always it's eternal, but it changes its form. So what are we saying here? So this idea of the Shankarites, of the Advaitins, or of the other schools of philosophy, the monastic schools, let's say, because there's more than just Shankara, there's some other schools too. Later on, if we discuss Indian philosophical systems, we'll go through, there are several different schools which believe this, right? Not just Shankara. So the effects produced from Brahman they say that the Vaishnavas say that the effects, these are basically two ideas. Either this world and the souls are real or they're not real, right? If it be supposed that Brahman itself, owing to nescience, is involved in empirical existence as a jiva, right? He's saying that God somehow or other becomes ignorant, becomes affected by ignorance, and therefore God, when he's affected by ignorance, becomes this living being, right? Because none of us can claim to be all-knowing or omniscient. We're not omniscient, at least in this material world. The Jivatman is not omniscient; it doesn't know everything. At least in the situation that we're in now in samsara, in this material world. So we know that we have limited knowledge. Our knowledge is limited, or we have this ignorance, some ignorance, right? We're not all-knowing. So the Supreme Brahman is all-knowing. So somehow or other, the all-knowing becomes not all-knowing, and that must be because of the effect of ignorance. Ignorance, somehow or other, ignorance is a separate thing, and it somehow affects Brahman and makes it into a jiva. This is a crazy philosophy, but this is what some of the other schools of Hinduism believe. Right. The imperfections connected with the individual self will exist in Brahman also, right? So this is an argument here too, right? Okay, so let's say, as let's take it as a devil's advocate sort of. Let's say that they're right. Let's say that Brahman somehow or other is affected by ignorance or nescience, right, and becomes the jiva, right? What does that mean? That would mean that the ignorance that we have, which is an inauspicious quality, right? We can't say that ignorance is an auspicious quality. It's not, right? That's the lack of something, right? Right? And the Supreme is not lacking anything. He's got unlimited auspicious qualities. So, therefore, if we say that God becomes the jiva by ignorance, then that would mean that God is infected by the imperfections of the individual self. In other words, the ignorance of ourselves. That would exist in Brahman also, that ignorance, right? That we can't accept that. We can't accept that. And it will not be possible to state a third category, which will remove the imperfections from Brahman, right? So let's say we say that therefore there's this ignorance which also which infects the jiva, that must also infect the Supreme Lord, right? It must be one of his qualities, right? And that's what they're saying. And therefore, they must think that there's another third category to take away that ignorance, because we've already understood the definition of the Supreme Lord is that he has all auspicious qualities. So if he has all auspicious qualities, it means that either he had an inauspicious quality because of becoming the jiva, is what he's saying, and then it was taken away. But how is it taken away? Then we have to think of a third thing that takes that ignorance away, apart from God and the jiva. It doesn't make any sense. And it goes on and on and on and on like this. People try to prove their point, but their original point was wrong. Because they won't admit their original point was wrong, they go to many, many lengths to try to prove that, right? But they're just digging the hole deeper, right? They're making more and more mistakes to try to undo their original misunderstanding of the Veda. Okay, so therefore it is impossible to accept the non-dualistic doctrine. I'll say that again. It's impossible to accept the non-dualistic doctrine because of these and many other reasons, but primarily these reasons. It's impossible to accept non-dualism. Brahman, which is undifferentiated consciousness, is not proved. Right? So this idea that the Supreme is this featureless, formless, attributeless thing, undifferentiated, but somehow rather conscious, right? Because remember, consciousness has to be there for creation. We don't see pots just automatically appearing. There has to be the conscious will of the potter to take the clay and make the pot, right? So consciousness is a part of creation. This is a discussion about creation. Who's the creator? Who creates everything? What's the source of everything, right? What is the source of what we see around us or ourselves even, like that? This is a very primal, discussion, very primal question. And so consciousness has to be there. Consciousness, our life. Srila Prabhupada of ISKCON used to say, life is from life. Consciousness comes from consciousness. There has to be consciousness to start with. Therefore, it's impossible to accept the non-dualistic doctrine of Brahman, which is undifferentiated consciousness. Brahman, which is undifferentiated consciousness, is not proved. So this idea that Brahman is undifferentiated consciousness is wrong. Since the existence of attributes, that is the causality of the universe, the bestowal of release, right, the giving of liberation, is possible only for Narayana. Brahman, right, when we use the term Brahman, the great spirit, is distinguished by difference. In other words, Brahman, the supreme, has attributes, has unlimited auspicious attributes. And he is known by the primary name, Sriman Narayana. Good. So, the traditional teaching of the Vedantins of the school of Vishishtadvaita is thus, summary. Brahman is the cause of the universe as qualified by sentient and non-sentient in their subtle state. Brahman creates from himself the creation. That creation is the sentience, the jivatmas, the living beings, the souls, and the non-sentience, material matter, right, in their subtle state. He creates them in their subtle state, right? Later on, Brahma creates the different bodies, and he's like the engineer that takes the product. But the clay itself, right? Brahma may be like a potter and making the pot, but the clay itself is created out of the Supreme, Sriman Narayana, by himself, by his will. He is the creator, he's the efficient cause, he's the catalyst, and he is also the material cause of the universe. Brahman is the effect as qualified by sentient and non-sentient in their gross state. So not only he creates them in their subtle state, but when they come from their subtle state, when they come into being in their gross state, right? We've already gone through the Sankhya system of creation, right? So it goes from subtle to gross. So when the living beings in this world go from their subtle state to their gross state, right? They are also considered to be Brahman in the effect of Brahman, the effect of Brahman, the effect of the Supreme, right? Right? And therefore the effect is non-different from the cause. The effect is non-different from the cause. So this material nature, either subtle or gross, in its subtle or gross form, material nature and the souls are the effect. They're the effect of Brahman. They're caused by him, right? He's the cause, they're the effect, right? So the effect, however, is non-different from the cause. Doesn't mean it's unreal, but it is non-different from the cause because it is created from him, by him. From him, by him, out of him. And therefore, it is non-different from him, in a sense, but also different from him. Right. So both these things are there. Thus, since Ishvara, or God, right, we're talking about here identifying the term Ishvara or God with Sriman Narayana and not any other gods or so-called gods, right, is admitted to, so since Ishvara is admitted, the views of the followers of the atheistic Sankhya, there's a version of Sankhya which is atheistic, near Ishvara Sankhya, Mimamsa, which is the Karma Mimamsa or the Purva Mimamsa or the Karma Kanda of the Vedas, are refuted. Since material causality is admitted by us in respect of Ishvara, right, that Ishvara actually created this matter, the following views of the schools of yoga, right, Pasupata, which is a Shaiva school, Shaivite school, and Nyaya, or logic, right? There's a logic school also, right? Are refuted. They're also refuted. Now, there are certain parts of Sankhya that we accept. There are certain parts of yoga that we accept. No part of Pashupada we accept. Certain parts of Nyaya or logic that we accept. But in general, there are these different schools, right? And they all come to the wrong conclusions. For Ishvara is admitted by them with reference to the efficient causality only. So the schools here, he's saying about the school of yoga, the school of Nyaya or logic, and the school of Pashupata or the Shaiva school, right? They say that God is only the efficient cause, right? He makes the universe, but he doesn't make it out of himself, which was explained in the beginning, that he is also the material cause. Just as in respect to the effect, that is the creation, Ishvara is the material and the efficient cause, so also it is possible for him to become the agent, the impeller, the controller, the revealer, the helper, the unconcerned, etc. So he can have these other functions also, like that. Just like we were talking about, he's the catalyst, the co-potent. Well, how is it being said? Anyway, he can also be the catalyst. Just as the imperfections of the states of childhood, youth, etc., adhere in the body only, and not in the embodied self, right? So we go through different states. The body has different states. In the Bhagavad Gita, that's described, Kobaram, Yobaram, Jara, but we have youth, maturity, old age. These different states are states of the body, but those states have different imperfections, right? When we're a baby, we don't have the strength of when we're mature. When we're old, we also don't have the strength that we used to have, right? So there are different stages of the different qualities that go along with the different bodies that we have during lifetime. Okay, but those stages of strength do not adhere to the soul itself. The soul of a baby is just as strong as the soul of an old man. The soul doesn't change in that way, that the body changes. So So just as the imperfections of states of childhood, youth, etc., adhere in the body only and not in the embodied self, which is the soul, right? Similarly, the imperfections of chit and achit do not extend to the highest self. Do we understand that? In other words, what we're saying is, we're saying that we're likening this universe of matter and souls to the body of God, right? So we know in this analogy, we're looking, this is called Sharira Shariri Bhava, right? So this is the analogy of understanding the relationship between the universe and the souls on one hand and God on the other hand is like the soul and the body, right? God being the soul in this case, and the material universe and the individual souls being his body. So because we're making this analogy, we're trying to understand what the relationship between the universe and the souls and God is. So that relationship is just like the relationship between our soul and our body. Our body, he's saying here, can go through different changes and different perfections and imperfections, right, throughout our life. That doesn't affect our soul. Our soul is still the same. We know that every 7 years, every cell in our body changes. But yet, my mother, I can meet my mother on Mother's Day and she can say, oh, you are the same person who is my son. Even though I might not have seen her for 7 years, what is she saying? None of the cells in my body are the same as they were 7 years ago. But yet she recognizes me as her same son because the soul is there. The soul is the same. The soul is the same, but the body is different, right? So the soul is not affected by the changes of the body. Similarly, if we consider the universe and the universe of matter and the souls, the individual souls, to be the body of God, changes in the universe and the individual souls do not change God. In other words, that defect that we talked about in the last page, the defect of the Advaitins or the Mayavadis or the monists, the people who believe in monism or singularity, right, in oneness, right? They think that nescience or ignorance, right, we are ignorant. They say we're ignorant and therefore God is ignorant because we're God. Here we're saying the defects that are there in the souls and in the individual souls and matter, or the bad qualities, right, do not adhere to God because we understand the relationship to be like the soul and the body. That's the point. That's the point. So how do people are often, in philosophy, this is a very common argument about the imminence and transcendence of God, whether he's totally transcendent, which he's completely separate from this material world, or somehow he's imminent. We understand that God is, at the same time, he's pervading from the outside, but he's also pervading this material world and the soul from the inside. So he has an intimate relationship with everybody and everything in this material world because he's pervading all of us, pervading all these elements and pervading everything, right? He's all pervasive. At the same time, he has a separate existence, right? Outside of this material world, separate from this material world, right? But because he's the material which this world and souls are made out of, right? He's the clay also. He's not just the potter, right? Therefore, there should be some relationship between the two. If we say there's a defect in the creation, then we say, oh, these philosophers who talk about the defect in the creation, in the souls and in matter, therefore that inheres in God. That's going to be there in God too, that defect. No, it's not. If we understand on the analogy of the body and the soul, the relationship is like on the body and the soul, because we just saw that in our own case, the changes in our body do not affect our soul. So that is the way that Ramanuja explains how God can remain pure and yet create things which are impure. God creates things which are impure, the souls and matter, which have defects, which change, right? Those things are real, but they go through changes. How can we therefore say that God is unchangeable, he's eternal, he's everlasting, and he has all auspicious qualities? Because he must also, the effect, everything from the effect must be there in the cause. So if of all these defects in the effect are there in the cause, then the cause also has defects. No, because we understand it in the relationship between as the analogy of the relationship between the soul and the body. That's why we can understand that there is no defect in the Supreme, and yet there is a relationship between us and the Supreme. So this is a unique understanding from the Veda. It's not made up by Ramanuja, this idea. It's there in what is called the Antaryami Brahmana of the Veda. This is explained, but people don't understand it because they misinterpret the Veda. So, who is the sentient and non-sentient? Who has the sentient and non-sentient as his body? That is, the Supreme Lord has a sentient and non-sentient as his body. Thus, there is no contradiction with the scriptural texts that declare the immutability of Brahman. Brahman is completely pure and has unlimited auspicious qualities and has no defects that we see in matter and the individual souls in this world. Since it is observed in ordinary experience that characteristics of the body consist of being invariably supported, controlled, subordinated, etc., Ishvara ensouling the universe is untouched by the imperfections adhering to the universe. So God, or Sriman Narayana, is untouched by the imperfections of the universe and the individual souls, right? Our ignorance and whatever imperfections there are in matter, right? He is untouched, right? But he is supporting, controlling, subordinating this universe to him. It is his creation. It and us are his creation, and we are his property, and we are therefore supported, controlled, and subordinated to him, by him, and to him. And Ishvara, the Supreme Lord, Sriman Narayana, is essentially of the nature of Vibhu. Vibhu means all expansive. Vibhu means great. So the word Brahman also means great, right? What is called Vibhu is all pervasiveness. All pervasiveness means he's everywhere. He understands everything, and he's everywhere. He's pervading everywhere. And this all pervasiveness is of three kinds. This all pervasiveness is of three kinds. Pervasiveness by his essential nature, that is Swarupa Vyapaka. Vyapaka means all pervasiveness. So all pervasiveness by his essential nature, pervasiveness by his attributive consciousness, right? So he's omnipresent. When we say Swarupa Vyapti means omnipresence, being everywhere present, everywhere, personally present, everywhere. Then we say by attributive consciousness. This is called Guna Vyapti. Guna Vyapti means he knows everything. He's omniscient. So he has a sense, he senses everything. He understands what's going on everywhere. That is by his consciousness, by his attributive consciousness, he understands what's going on. So he is omnipresent, omniscient, right? And pervasiveness by his body. Pervasiveness by his body, because this world and the souls are his body, he pervades from the outside. Just as we know, we pervade our body, right? The soul is there within the body, it's minute, but the consciousness is there throughout the whole body. So pervasiveness by his body. And he is said to be infinite. What is called infinite is to be free from three kinds of limitations. The threefold limitation consists of being limited or determined by space, by time, and by object. So he is not limited by time or space or object. Truth, consciousness, bliss, purity, etc., all these auspicious qualities, all these unlimited auspicious qualities, are the attributes which determine the essential nature of God, or Ishvara. Knowledge, power, etc., are the attributes of the essential nature so determined. Knowledge, power, etc., are the attributes of the essential nature so determined. Omniscience, omnipotence, etc., are the attributes which are useful for the act of creation. Love, excellence of disposition, easiness of attainment, which means solabhya, right? He's so merciful, right? Are the attributes which are useful for providing refuge to the devotees, or the prapanas, or the people who do sharanagati or surrender unto him, right? So love, excellence of disposition. He has an excellent disposition. He has the greatest disposition. He has the best disposition. He has love for the living beings. And he is easy to attain. He's easy to surrender to. It's not difficult to surrender unto him. Compassion and others are attributes which are useful for the protection of the good, right? When the Lord comes to this world, he says, Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chudaskritam. Paritranaya sadhunam means I have compassion and I will protect those persons who are surrendered to me or who are my devotees. Since the essential nature of these attributes has already been explained in the chapter on consciousness, Dharma Bhuta Jnana, right? We already discussed that. It will not be explained further. The Ishvara, or Sriman Narayana, thus set forth, after creating the cosmic sphere, abides in Chaturmukha, Daksha, time, etc., as the imminent, and creates further. Okay, so there are two things. In the Puranas, there are different subject matters, and two of the subject matters are called Sarga and Pratisaga. So Sarga means the original creation. The Lord initially creates the material world, right? The Mahatattva, the material world. But within that, he also creates Brahma, Daksha, Prajapati Daksha, and others, and time also, to further creation, to do further creation on his behalf. So he is also the primary cause of that, because he sets the ball rolling, getting Brahma and the Prajapatis and giving them time and therefore allowing them or making them to do further creation. That is called Pratisaga. So Sarga and Pratisaga. So initial creation and subsequent creation, which is like engineering, basically. The potter that already has the clay. He first of all creates the clay, then he creates the potter to make the pot. Right? Incarnating as forms of Vishnu, different avatars, and abiding in Manu, time, etc., in the form of the imminent, he becomes the savior. So he comes in different avatars at different times, and he helps to save the souls that are here in this material world. As the imminent, right? He is the imminent. He not only comes in his same form, but he is also the imminent. He's a super soul within Manu and all these different devatas to do this. So here he says also in Rudra, right? As the imminent in Rudra, time and the god of death, he destroys, right? So sometimes people have this strange idea that in Hinduism there are these three gods and they're separate, and then one of them creates, one of them maintains, and one of them destroys, right? There's Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. But that's not true. Lord Narayana is the ultimate creator because he creates Brahma. If we say Brahma is a creator, no, before Chaturmukha Brahma, before four-headed Brahma, was created by Lord Narayana, Sriman Narayana. Maintaining, yes, okay, Sriman Narayana maintains everything. And destroying, we say Shiva is the destroyer. Okay, Shiva is the destroyer, but Shiva is a mental son of Brahma. He was created by Brahma, and ultimately, initially, right? Shiva, just like Brahma, they're all Jivatmans. They're all individual souls, and all the individual souls come from Sriman Narayana. In the beginning, there is one, and the one became many, stated in the Vedas. And Sriman Narayana was there before. In the Yatavashira, Narayana Yatavashira Upanishad, it says, Narayana Brahmo Jayate, right? That Narayana was before Brahma, Narayana Rudro Jayate, before Rudra, right, was Narayana. So from Narayana came Rudra, from Narayana came Brahma. Therefore, he's also the primal cause of destruction, as well as creation and maintenance. Therefore, he, Narayana, is the creator, protector, and destroyer of the universe, and all individual souls as well. When we say the universe, we mean everything. We mean the body of God. We mean all the individual souls as well, that which is not the supreme. The Ishvara, or God, the supreme, Sriman Narayana. Now that we've understood that he's the creator, the protector, and the destroyer of the universe, right? Let's have some more understanding about him. We talked about the avatars a little bit, their function, right? Ishvara, the Ishvara or Sriman Narayana of such description abides in a fivefold form. Now, this is the understanding, the doctrine that comes from Pancharatra system. In the Pancharatra system, it's explained Para, Vyuha, Vibhava, Antaryamin, and Archa. These are the four. We sometimes say Karnika, Vyuha, Vibhava, Antaryamin, and Archa. Okay, these are the five forms of God. Para means the original or supreme form of Godhead. Paravasudeva Sriman Narayana. Vyuha means his expansions, which are used for creation. Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. Vibhava means all those different incarnations where he comes in his self-same form, or maybe a different form in this material world, like Matsya, Kuma, Varaha, Narasimha, Rama, Parashurama, Kalki, all these, Krishna, right? These are different avatars. Vibhava. Antaryamin, we've already spoken about how God is all pervasive, right? He's omnipresent, he's omniscient, right? He's within your heart as the super soul, the Paramatman, sitting next to the Atman within the soul, within the body. That is called Antaryami or Paramatman. And lastly, the fifth form of God, which is mentioned here, is the Archavatar. Archavatar is like the deities that are there in our puja room, the deities that are there in our temples, the different forms of the Lord which are worshipped by us. So these are the five forms of Sriman Narayana. What is called Para is Narayana, who is expressed by such terms as Parabrahman, Paravasudeva, etc., who is qualified by the infinite auspicious attributes such as knowledge, power, etc., whose presence is being enjoyed by the eternals, the eternally liberated souls, right, the Nityasuris, and also the liberated souls, the Muktas, such as Ananta, right, Ananta Shesha, Ananta, Garuda, Vishvaksena, etc., and other Sama singing liberated self. So other living beings there in Vaikuntha who are also singing the hymns of the Sama Veda in praise of the Lord, who is the possessor of a divine auspicious figure, who is four-armed, who is accompanied by Shri, Bhu, and Nila. He has these three consorts, Shri Devi, Bhumi Devi, right, goddess of the earth, and Nila Devi, who is equipped with divine weapons such as the conch, discus, etc., who is adorned with divine ornaments such as a crown, earrings and anklets, bracelets, all these different things, who is seated on Shesha, right, the divine serpent, right, who is upon the throne composed of 8 legs. So Shesha Naga is there. He's lying on Shesha. He's sitting on Shesha, and the throne that Shesha is on has got 8 legs, and these 8 legs are meditated upon as being different things: dharma, adharma, jnana, ajnana, vairagya, avairagya. There are these different attributes that are conceived of as the legs of the throne. In the Maha Mani Mandapa, Maha means great, Mani means jewel, Mandapa means pavilion. In a pavilion, a jewel pavilion, a great jewel pavilion, which is in Vaikuntha, within the divine abode, Sri Vaikuntha, attended by the gatekeepers, who are the security guards of Vaikuntha, the gates of Vaikuntha, Chanda, Prachanda, Bhadra, Subhadra, Jaya, Vijaya, Datta, and Vidatta, etc. And then there are other attendants also, Kumada, Kumadaksha. There are many other attendants which are mentioned also in the description of Srimad Vaikuntha in the Shastras. In the divine city called Vaikuntha, within Tripad Vibhuti. Tripad Vibhuti. Okay, so the spiritual world is called Tripad Vibhuti, which means Vibhuti means his glory. His glory, the Supreme Lord's glory. So within his glorious abode, right? His glorious, there are two glories that he has. He has this material world, that's also his glory. And he has the spiritual world, that's also his glory. The spiritual world, however, is different from this material world because it is Vaikuntha, without any suffering, without any problems, right? No worries, Vaikuntha, right? No anxieties. So Vaikuntha is considered Tripad Vibhuti, and this material world is called Ekpad Vibhuti. So Tripad means 3 parts. Pada means feet, right? So tri means 3 feet. So it means 3 parts. Ekpada means 1 feet. So this material world is practically infinite. The spiritual world is infinite. These are infinite places, but to get an idea of the relationship in size between 2 infinities, right? We say that one, the spiritual world, is three parts. This one is 1 part. So this one part is about 1/3 the size of that part, right? So how do we understand the difference between one infinity and another infinity? Surely every infinity is the same size, right? But mathematically, even we can understand there are different concepts of infinity which are greater than other concepts of infinity. How is that? Okay, I'll give you an example. In mathematics, there is a set of numbers. If we have a group called a set of numbers, all these particular numbers are in that set, right? So if I say the set of whole numbers, the set of positive whole numbers, right? The set of positive whole numbers. So that means starting from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to n, up to infinity, that is a set of numbers. That's an infinite set of numbers. However, if I say the set of all whole numbers, then I have not only from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to infinity as the set, but I also have from 0, -1, -2, -3, -4 to minus infinity as a set of numbers too. So that set is an infinite set. The first set is an infinite set, positive whole numbers. The second set, all whole numbers, is another infinite set, but that set is twice as big as the first set, even though they're both infinite, right? We can see that logically, right? So now, and mathematically that's correct, okay? So now, if we then say, is there a set which is bigger than that? Yes, there's a set of all numbers. All numbers includes not only whole numbers, but part numbers. So if I say all numbers, it means from 0 to 1, there can be 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, 1, right? And even I have 0.01, 0.001, 0.0001. I can put decimal points, and I can go to an infinite number of decimal points in determining different numbers between 0 and 1. So even between 0, the whole number 0 and the whole number 1, or the whole number 1 and the whole number 2, there's an infinite number of numbers. They're not whole numbers, part numbers, decimals. So there's an infinity of numbers like that. So that is much bigger. That's a much bigger infinity than the first infinity of just all whole positive numbers. or even the infinity of all whole numbers. So mathematically, we can begin to understand the idea that there are different infinities, and one infinity can be actually considered more than the other infinity. So here we are discussing Vaikuntha, which is called Nitya Vibhuti, his eternal glory, and the material world, which is called Leela Vibhuti, or the glorious place where he goes to do his pastimes, to have his different pastimes in the different avatars. And that we understand they're both infinite, but the eternal place is 3 times as infinite as the other one. So that's just, I wanted to just make that clear, that some people say, well, how can you say one infinity is different from another infinity? You can, of course you can. You just have to explain it. Just like there are some philosophies that they don't understand. They say it's not possible. It's the Advaitins, they say anivachaniya. You can't be described by words. The concept is beyond us. We can't meditate. We can't understand how God is one and different. It's achintya. It's inconceivable. No, it's not inconceivable, right? It's unknowable in the sense that we can't fully know something. Maybe we can't fully understand a concept, but we can have some conception of it. We can have some understanding of it by using these analogies. So the analogy of the body and the soul, Sharira Shariri Bhava, is a very good analogy to understand the difference and sameness between God and the material universe and souls. Similarly, the examples I gave in mathematics are a way to understand simply, not a way to fully understand, but a way to conceptualize, to have the concept, to think about the concept, and to try to understand the difference between the material world, the infinity of the material world, and the infinity of the spiritual world. That's all. Okay, so enough about that. So we then have protected by city watches such as Kumara, Kumadaksha, Pundarika, Vamana, Sankukarna, and Sarvanetra, Sumukha, Supratista, etc. Right? Who are equipped with divine weapons, ornaments, attendants, and other paraphernalia. So it's a description of this is a description of Para, of the supreme, the original supreme person, right? And what is surrounding him in Vaikuntha. He's in Vaikuntha, the original. What is called Vyuha is the highest Brahman himself, abiding in a fourfold form of Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, for the purposes of meditation by the devotees and for creation of the universe. Of these, Sri Vasudeva is replete with 6 qualities. Now, all forms of the Supreme Lord have these 6 qualities. The definition of the word Bhagawan, meaning having these 6 primary qualities. He has, of course, unlimited qualities, but he has these 6 qualities of strength, fame, knowledge, renunciation, beauty, and strength, fame, and opulence. Okay, so he has these 6 qualities, right? And now it's explained that all of his forms have these 6 qualities, but some of the forms show more of a particular quality or a set of qualities than the other qualities. So here it's being described that Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. In Vasudeva, all 6 qualities are shown in full. In Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, two different qualities are shown more than the others. The others are not shown. They're there. He still has those qualities. So, okay. So it says here, of these, Sri Vasudeva is replete with the 6 qualities. He's showing those all 6 qualities in full. Sankarshana is filled with knowledge and strength, right? Jnana and Bala. Pradyumna possesses the highest degree of lordship and virility, which is Aishwarya and Virya. Yeah. Aniruddha is consummate with potency and splendor, which means Shakti and Tejas, right? Thus, the 6 qualities are distributed. Each one of the 4 vyuhas, these Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, these different vyuha forms, right, descends or expands into 3 sub-vyuhas, such as Keshava, etc. Okay, so let's go back and let's understand this. Vasudeva expands into Keshava, Narayana, Madhava. Sankarshana expands into Govinda, Vishnu, and Madhusudana. Pradyumna expands into Sridhara, Rishikesha, and Padmanabha. Keshava, Narayana, Madhava, Govinda, Vishnu, Madhusudana. Trivikrama, Vamana, and Sridhara, right? And Aniruddha expands into Trivikrama, Vamana, Sridhara, Rishikesha, Padmanabha, and Damodara, right? So from Keshava to Damodar, Keshava, Narayana, Madhava, Govinda, Vishnu, Madhusudana, Trivikrama, Vamana, Sridhara, Rishikesha, Padmanabha, Damodara. These 12 forms are called upavyuhas, or subsidiary vyuhas. So from the 4 vyuhas, Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, these 12 come off. These 12 are expansions in that way. The first 3 from Vasudeva, the second 3 from Sankarshana, the third 3 from Pradyumna, and the fourth 3 from Aniruddha. Okay, so who are presiding deities of the 12 months of the year, right? The 12 months and the 12 adityas. The 12 adityas are the 12 kalas or sections or parts, right? Or expansions of Surya Narayana, of Surya. So because the year is divided into months and months are solar, okay, we have lunar months also, but the months are basically solar. There are different months of the year where the sun goes into different houses of the zodiac, the ecliptic going around the earth as seen from the earth. If we see the earth, if we see from a geocentric point of view, if we're looking, we're on the earth. So when we look from the earth, we see the sun traveling around the earth. But the sun isn't really traveling around the earth. I mean, at night we see the sun going down on the horizon in the west, and in the morning we see it coming up on the horizon in the east. But the sun isn't actually going around the earth. The earth is in fact going around the sun. But from our point of view, the sun is going into different phases during the year, right? So these are called zodiac signs, or houses of the zodiac. And therefore, these have to do with the 12 adityas, right? or expansions of Surya Narayana. And they also have presiding deities of these sub-vyuhas from Keshava to Damodar, the 12 vyuhas, right? They are presiding deities over the months. Their locations are represented, literally ordained or fixed up in the perpendicular marks on the bodies, the Urdhva Pundram, on the body of the devotees, which are 12. So the locations of these upavyuhas, they also pervade the body of the devotees, of the Vaishnavas, either Bhakti Yogins or the Prapanas, the Sharnagatis, right? Who in the different parts on their body where they put the Urdhva Pundra on the upper part of the body, then we meditate upon the presence of that particular vyuha form, upavyuha form, in that place where we put the Vaishnava tilak. These Keshava, shining like gold, bears 4 discuses, right? So he's explaining about these upavyuha forms. Keshava is the color of gold, and he has 4 hands with 4 chakras, 4 discuses. The dark complexion in Narayana bears 4 conchas. Madhava, bright like a sapphire, holds 4 maces or 4 clubs. Govinda, who shines like a moon, has 4 bows. In fact, this sloka is very common, and when we put on the tilak or the Urdhva Pundra marks, we chant this. We can chant this, and we can meditate upon these different deities being present in the different markings that we put on the 12 places on the body. Govinda, who shines like the moon, has 4 bows. Vishnu, who resembles the lotus blossom in complexion, has 4 plows or halas, right? The lotus complexioned Madhusudana bears 4 clubs. The fire complexioned Trivikrama bears 4 swords. The Vamana, who is effulgent like the rising sun, has 4 vajras. Vajras are thunderbolt weapons. Sridhara, who resembles the white lotus in complexion, has 4 spears. Rishikesha, who's effulgent like lightning, bears 4 maces. Padmanabha, who is radiant like the sun, bears 5 weapons. So Padmanabha has all 5 weapons, the 5 weapons of Vishnu, which we chant a stotra, we chant a prayer to. Well, after we chant the Vishnu Sahasranama, there's the Panchayuta Stotram, which mentions these 5 weapons. These 5 weapons are the chakra, the conch, the mace or the club, right? The bow, which includes arrows, bow and arrows, right? And the sword, right? So these are the 5 weapons. The 5 weapons are chakra, conch, mace, bow, and sword. 5, right? So Damodara or Damodara, right? Who is red complexioned like the Indragopa insect. So there's some small insect which is red, right? Bears 4 cords. I'm not exactly what 4 cords are, but it's a type of weapon. You can look it up. So what is called Vibhava? Now, okay, so we explained what para is. We explained what Vyuha is. Now we're going to explain what Vibhava is. Vibhava, what is called Vibhava, is the descent of Ishvara or Sriman Narayana amongst the living beings. Right? Avatara means one who descends. By means of forms similar to that genus. So he incarnates in different species. We know in the scriptures that we read about his incarnations in human-like form, but we don't necessarily know about all of the incarnations that the Lord takes, all of the avatars that he takes. So by means of forms similar to that genus, right? So similar means that even there are some which are similar to, and some we know of which are not similar to the way human beings look, right? So in the 10 kinds or the 10 Das avatars, they are those particular avatars such as Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Narasimha, Vamana, Parashurama, Dasarati Rama, Balarama, Krishna, and Kalki. These 10. Now, there are different concepts in different sampradayas of the 10 avatars, right? In the Madhva Sampradaya, they don't include Balarama, but they include Buddha. In the Gaudiya Sampradaya, they include Balarama, but they also include Buddha. But they don't include Krishna because they say Krishna is the the para form of God. In some other Vaishnava Sampradayas, they have some different ideas. So basically, we have those 3 main concepts of the Das avatars. The Sri Vaishnava concept is the one that we see in ancient Shastra mostly, right? So anyway, it's not important. There are other forms of avatars also, which are empowered living beings, which we may or may not discuss here. We don't know. We'll see. But here we're talking about directly Vishnu Tattva, the principle of Vishnu, expansions of him called Vibhava avatars, Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, etc. Okay. So then of these, the avatar of Matsya was assumed for restoring the Vedas or Vedic Pramanas to Brahma, right, through the defeat of demons who had stolen them. So there are these demons, Madhu and Kaitaba, who stole the Vedas from Brahma. Brahma needs the Vedas. He should have the Vedas, right, because Vedic Pramana is important in this world. And so therefore, Matsya assumed for restoring the Vedas. Right, and we can read the story of these avatars in different Puranic stories. By supporting the Mount Mandara, the Kurma avatar descended for creating nectar, the nectar of immortality, which was the means of the non-decaying and immortality of the Devas. Right, so the Devas live for many, many years, and the reason they live is because they've drunk this nectar of immortality, which was made by the churning of the ocean of milk by the Kurma avatar, the Tortoise Avatar, Turtle Avatar, had a mountain on its back and was used to churn this ocean. Of course, it also rubbed the back of Kurma, which he wanted his back rubbed. The Varaha Avatar, which is in the form of a boar, was manifested with the view to protect his own consort, Bhumi Devi, or the goddess of the earth, with the desire to save humanity, sunk in the ocean of phenomenal existence. The Narasimha avatar, half man, half lion, was assumed within the pillar for the destruction of the great giant Hiranyakashipu and for the purpose of saving him who had taken shelter, meaning Prahlad, right? Prahlad, the son of Hiranyakashipu, who had taken shelter, had surrendered to the Supreme Lord and was his devotee. The Vamana avatar was taken for the protection of the world by cleansing its sins with the water of the Ganges, or the Ganga, arising from his lotus feet when he became Trivikrama. So initially, Vamana avatar appeared as a dwarf Brahmin boy, and later on he manifested a great form where he kicked a hole in the top of the universe, and water from the Viraja, or the Karandak ocean, flowed down and came down to the earth as the Ganges and cleansed the sins of the world. That holy water. Parashurama avatar was assumed for the annihilation of wicked Kshatriyas. So sometimes we have these wicked politicians or military persons that have to be defeated, and the Lord came himself as Parashurama to do that. Sri Rama avatar was undertaken for the protection of those who had surrendered unto him. So that is why the Sri Vaishnavas say that the Valmiki Ramayana, if we read it, it is called a Sharanagati Shastra, because so much within the Ramayana that everybody is surrendering unto Lord Rama. Sri Rama, and especially Sita is considered to be the important person in the Ramayana, because she is the embodiment of surrender to the Lord. For the establishment of Dharma also, he established righteousness. Balarama Avatara was accepted for the destruction of Pralamba and certain other asuras. Sri Krishna Avatara was assumed for pointing out to humanity the means for liberation. So it's very important here that Krishna came and he spoke the Bhagavad Gita. And in the Bhagavad Gita, he gave the systems of Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, the essence of the Upanishads. The Bhagavad Gita is considered to be like the Upanishads are considered to be like a herd of cows, and Lord Krishna is considered to be the cow herd who milks the cows. The nectar that he milks from the cows, which are the Upanishads, is the Gita Upanishad, or the Gita. And the essence of that milk is what tells us the different means to liberation, which are Kama Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and of course, Sharanagati in the Krishna Charma Sloka, Sarvadhanam Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Bhaja, Aham Sarvapapebhyo Mokshayishyami Masichaha, which is the formula, instruction given by final instruction given by the Lord himself, the most important instruction on how to surrender unto him. And the Kalki Avatar, which comes later in Kali Yuga, will descend also for the establishment of Dharma in its entirety by the destruction of the unrighteous and liberating the world from Kali, from the evils of the Kali Yuga. Thus, there are infinite modes in each one of these 10 avatars, right? The 36 modes, such as Padmanabha, etc., are also Vibhavas. So there's a list probably given in the footnote, but we won't go there. There are these many. Further, there are many manifold manifestations, such as Dari Bhakta, Hayagriva, Naranarayana, etc. Naranarayana came and Hayagriva came and gave and also protected the Vedas. Naranarayana came and gave the Astakshara mantra in Bhadrakashram. In this way, the avatars are many, such as the primary, secondary, the full, the partial, and the possessed. So there are full avatars, which are completely God. There are partial avatars, and then there are the possessed, those who have possess the certain energies and certain qualities that are given by the Lord for them to fulfill a particular service or purpose. Among these, the division as those who are worthy of worship, and those who are not worthy of worship should be noted. So that will be interesting to have a look at that footnote. So the cause for the descent of Ishvara's will, the cause for these descents of these different avatars is the will, the Satya Sankalpa again, the divine will of Ishvara or Sriman Narayana, and not karma. So unlike all of us in this material world, we take birth due to karma, right? Those partial or possessed or full avatars of the Supreme Lord, they do not take birth due to karma. They take birth only because of the divine will of the Lord. The fruit is verily the protection of the good and the destruction of the wicked, which is a quote straight out of Bhagavad Gita, Paritranaya sadhunam, vinashaya chidaskritam, dharma samstapanataya, sambhavami yuge yuge. The Lord comes age after age. He comes, he descends himself, right, to destroy to protect the good and destroy the wicked, and to establish the principles of dharma. What is called Antaryaman is that form of Ishvara, or the Sriman Narayana that resides in the region of the heart, which stays with the individual self as its friend in its states of experience, such as heaven, hell, etc., through different births, and which is perceptible by the yogins. So some yogis, they can actually see the supersoul by meditation. Though Ishvara in the form of Antaryaman coexists with the individual self, he is untouched by the taints inherent in the individual self, right? Even though he coexists with us in the body. What is called the Arch Avatar is the special form which, without remoteness of space and time, accepts for its bodies any substance chosen by the devotees and descends into it with a non-material body. He becomes dependent on the worshipper for bath, food, sitting, sleeping, etc. He bears everything and is replete with knowledge and other attributes. He is present in the houses, villages, towns, sacred places, and hills, etc. He is fourfold because of the difference of Swayam Vyakta, so there are self-manifesting deities, Daiva, consecrated by divine beings, Saida, consecrated by rishis or sages, and Manusha, or consecrated or installed or invoked by human beings. Even in all these aforesaid 5 states, again, what are the 5 states of Bhagawan? Para, Vyuha, Vibhava, Antaryaman, Archa, the supreme, the expansions for creation, the different divine descents of avatars, the super soul within the heart of every living being, and the deity in the temple and in the house, right? Even in the all aforesaid 5 states, Bhagawan is ever present with Shri, Goddess Lakshmi. How he is present, how she is present with him is a different matter. And the northern schools say that she is there in her Swarup. She has Swarup Vyapti, just like the Lord, that by her very form she is personally present everywhere. And the southern school of Sri Vaishnavas say she is there by her attributive consciousness, that her guna vyapti is there. She has guna vyapti, and therefore she pervades by her attributive consciousness. By the fact that she is omniscient. This import is established by scripture and by means of knowledge, other means of knowledge. Okay. By this, the Ekayana view, the one-pointed view, that he is alone and without Shri is refuted. So there is a point of view called the Ekayana view, which says that the Supreme Lord is everywhere and accepts all these things, but says he is alone. He is not alone. He is with Shri, but how he is with Shri everywhere is understood in slightly different ways according to the northern and southern schools. Thus, Ishvara has been explained. Thus ends the 9th avatar of Ishvara, or about God, the Supreme Lord Sriman Narayana, of Yatindramata Dipika, composed by Srinivasa, the foremost disciple of Sriman Mahacharya. The ornament in the line of Srivadulas.